Our next guest is Mark Chesnut. He's an editor at America's First Freedom and has been writing some pretty interesting stuff about state gun laws. How's it going?
Going great, Colion. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, I've had a couple of faux pas today, but I'll be good.
That's probably going to continue when we do this.
Yeah, probably so. At least you know what you're getting into beforehand. Let's talk about your Tale of Two States article. So what was the inherent premise behind that for those of us that don't know?
Well, when almost every morning, and I spend a lot of my time cruising through all the firearms news and the different political stuff, and it just struck me one day that whenever you look at some of the different states, and in this case I wrote about Texas and Connecticut, that you can tell a lot about a state and the freedom of the people by how the politicians are thinking, and you can tell how they're thinking by the kind of stuff that they're introducing. Like one of the things that I mentioned was Governor Malloy in Connecticut, who is pushing a plan to raise the price for pistol fees to a really, really high cost.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there were people in Texas, which had a high price to start with, are trying to lower theirs where it's affordable to everyone. And it's almost a different discussion about the whole inequity of treating people's constitutional rights based on how much money they might have or what their income is. But in this case, I didn't get into that much, but I was mainly talking about the fact that the two states are so vastly different. And there's gun lovers and gun owners and shooters and people who carry firearms for self-defense and all sorts of different gun owners in both of those states.
Yeah.
And in Texas, where you guys are, I'm sure you feel a lot more free than some of those gun owners in Connecticut do.
What's very interesting about those two perspectives is, no one undervalues the importance of firearms. Even the people in some of the most anti-guns, even some of the most politicians in the most anti-gun states, because they're very pro in terms of allowing people who they consider to be the elite class to have them.
Right.
They don't really have a problem with those. If you're okay, you're within this group, in this circle of people, you get them. We understand why you want them, because inherently the idea of firearm ownership is pretty universal.
Right.
Whereas in Texas, there's an I'm going to go so far as to say an inherent trust in the population of people there that is not exhibited in some of the more eastern, northern parts of our country.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I don't really understand what the inherent catalyst is or why that is, so to speak, but it is definitely something that's incredibly noticeable.
Yeah, and when you look at a lot of your real Northeast or your real liberal politicians, a lot of them are the exact same people who have a fit if you talk about having to have voter ID or have some kind of identification, because they're saying, you're pricing people with low incomes right out of being able to practice a constitutional right, and then they'll turn around and make it cost $300 to buy a pistol permit.
Yeah, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, but I think having an effective ability to protect yourself is more important than voting. I'm sorry. I just think that to be the case. And even though in my mind it makes perfect sense, somebody's going to find a way to twist that and then vilify me in some way. They're pretty good at doing that.
We're used to that.
Unfortunately, I am. And it's kind of sad because I would like that to not be the case. I love firearms. I would much rather be at the range shooting and enjoying them instead of having to fight with imbeciles online all day. But unfortunately, that's kind of where we are, because if we don't have the countering voices that we have, like with what you do, what I do, and what other people do, we're going to have a flock of people who don't know anything about guns and easily swayed in certain directions that's against their self-interest.
Right. When we started America's First Freedom magazine, it's been 17. I was just looking. We're starting the June 2017 issue, and when we kicked off that magazine, it was the June 2000 issue. So we've done 17 years of that now.
Wow.
And we're starting into the 18th year. And everybody was not sure if even a political gun magazine, would advertisers buy advertisement? Will anybody read that? And it's been really successful. And we've been able to get out a lot of information to a lot of people. And I think we've kind of even shaped the dialogue at times. And that's what we're trying to push for now that we've had for a couple of years now. But, we have the America's First Freedom.org, where we can be more timely and we can get more information out, and not just to members. And we're trying to continue doing that.
Yep, absolutely. And I think one of the beautiful aspects of what America First Freedom does is it empowers their readership. There's so much information about firearm ownership. There's so much information in this gun debate. So many facts and stats and figures are just thrown around all over the place. And for a lot of people, it's hard to take in. They don't know how to structure it. They don't know how to organize the thoughts, or just simply knowing what's going on. And I think America's First Freedom does a really good job of keeping the constituency informed about these issues, and then empowering them to go out and then to utilize that information to inform other people. So that's why I think it's freaking phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. One of the interesting things, and this is probably the same for you, since we spend all our time digging into this stuff, we know a lot about the issues and a lot about what's going on throughout the country and in all the different states. And it sometimes surprises us that people know so little about it. So, that's why we put so much emphasis and try to at least share some of the things we've learned with people that they can use. I mean, you can look on any social media and all it is a battle over gun rights. If you have the same friends I do. So if the people on the right side, which is our side, have the information they need, it makes that a lot better.
Absolutely. Now, you also wrote recently about how the NRA isn't giving up on California. California is near and dear to me, largely because I see the potential in the state in terms of just the one, largely, ironically enough, the people. It's just a beautiful state. There's so many great things about California, but then they're kind of in this conundrum of just anti-gun servitude. So what did you mean by that when you said the NRA isn't giving up on California?
The thing about California is, I think, I don't have the exact numbers, but at one time, not too many years ago, there were more NRA members in California than anywhere else. I think it's pretty close between California and Texas, and that's kind of amazing. And sometimes I think that they feel like they're kind of out on a limb and we've all forgot about them, because you'll see different people talking, California could just fall off into the ocean for all I care. Well, they may be talking about the politicians in Sacramento or something, but there's a lot of good law-abiding gun owners out there that are just wanting to do the same things that you and I do. Yeah. And ask yourself, how do they even have a 3-gun match out there if you have to have a bullet button or all the other different things they have, So I had noticed that recently at the California Rifle and Pistol Association, Chris Cox had done a recorded message for him. And as I dug deeper, I found that there was a new NRA website in support of California stuff and has a lot of different ways to get more information about legal stuff and legislation and judicial. And I just thought, it was important to let those people out there know that we're still thinking about them and to let everybody else know. I mean, I'm from Oklahoma and I've lived here all my life. And the common idea around here is, people just want to say, just forget California. Yeah. Well, there's good Americans out there that are just like me and you, that are gun owners and trying to practice their constitutional rights and live their life, and we just can't give up on them.
And the funny thing is, it's like, I think people forget that we are still relatively nomadic creatures. Like, if California can become the way it did, and we're talking about the state that was responsible for the most infamous rifle in the country today, the AR-15, what makes people think that the same thing couldn't happen in, say, a stronghold like Texas?
Absolutely. So it's kind of the petri dish.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And we've tried to make that point many times over the years that the California stuff ends up in Maryland and it ends up in Connecticut and it could be Kansas or it could be Texas. If you try it out there and they can make it stick, they're going to try it somewhere else.
Absolutely. And the last thing you want to hear is, Texas can just fall off of the map. Because once you start talking like that, then
Oklahoma people say that anytime.
It's true. Well, I mean, they're just jealous because Texas, we're our own country, and and everybody just kind of envies us. I mean, but Oklahoma's kind of like our favorite cousin.
Yeah, we sometimes consider Texas as a large southern Oklahoma. So
you know what? I don't have a problem with that at all. Real quickly before we go, what else have you been working on lately?
Oh, I think I'm trying to remember. I just wrote the California deal was what I wrote yesterday, and one of the things that we hadn't had a chance to discuss about that yet is I think it's neat that the shall issue bill out there even got a hearing.
Yeah.
It didn't make it out of committee, but there's a huge movement throughout the country to um, liberalize, for lack of a better word, right to carry laws and to make it easier to carry a gun for self-defense. And even legislators in California, some of them have that in mind, even though they haven't been able to get it passed.
Yeah.
But 30 years ago when they passed the right to carry in Florida, they didn't do it the first time they tried it either. They came back and they kept pushing. They were tenacious and they didn't give up and they made it happen. And now 30 years later, we see what's happened.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. I keep telling people all the time, the fight on the state level is just as important as the fight on the federal level.
Absolutely. And right now, it seems like it's even
more so.
maybe even more so
Yeah.
because there's just a lot of things going on in a lot of states. And for every state you see passing a new permitless carry law, there was another one where they're trying to increase the taxes on guns and ammo or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to keep an eye on it. And sometimes, some of them don't surprise you at all, and then some of them you say, I can't believe they're trying to do that. So.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Mark. It was definitely a pleasure speaking with you today, and I thank you for joining us this evening.
Enjoyed it. Thank you a lot.
Will do. And you definitely have a good one.
You too.
Thanks for joining us today on Seeing Live. We're done for this week, but we'll be back Monday at 5 p.m. on NRATV, and I hope you will too. I'm Colion, and I'm out.